All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. We are going to talk all NBA today. We'll talk about the weekends and any takeaways out of it, some of the make-miss playoff prices, which Drew has a lean on, and then we'll talk MVP and a chaotic six-man of the year market, which is, I think, a fun one to break down. But let's start off, Drew. How was your weekend and any big betting takeaways?
Yeah, incredible weekend. I'm fresh off the slopes here up in Mammoth Lakes, California. Just an incredible experience. Beautiful skiing, beautiful vistas, incredible conditions. I'm in a great mood. The biggest takeaways from the weekend from a betting perspective, the golf in Mexico was actually super entertaining. The tennis was sad. Iga not getting home in Dubai hurt a lot. But the NBA has been phenomenal. There are so many things cooking right now, and the All-Star break has a tendency some years, I feel like, to throw cold water on the momentum that the league has going. And this year it feels the opposite, right? Like it felt like every kind of important storyline was immediately like being contested on court between teams fighting for playoff spots on Thursday, on Friday, Saturday through today. And, we've seen goods and bads, like some of the teams that you may have rated based on pre-trade deadline rosters, like the Nets. They can't create. It doesn't matter that they fired their coach and that they love their new coach and that they really want to play for him. They have no one that can create offense. A team like the Suns, two just absolutely trip over yourself performances coming out of the break here, where you're like, this is all of your worths are exposed here. Your defense is a disaster. Like, how do you right the ship? They right the ship in impressive fashion today against the Lakers. I felt like the teams at the top of the West in particular, who I kind of want to highlight, they came out of the All-Star break with a purpose, right? Everybody is playing with a very distinct purpose right now. Like, the stakes are clear. This is wide open if you have, home court advantage in the Western Conference round one of the playoffs. And you're seeing renewed enthusiasm from a Nuggets team that was a little lackadaisical in the month of February. And you're seeing just outstanding play from the Thunder so far. Like, holy smokes, this team is as good as advertised, is maybe even taking their game overall to the next level. The Clippers Thunder game was the most important game that's happened since All-Star break by far, in my opinion. And there were some interesting takeaways there. Clippers definitely did not necessarily come out with as much intensity as the Thunder did. Particularly out of halftime, they were a little bit unsure who was ultimately responsible for running the offense, which I thought was a little surprising. Whereas the Thunder just played just supremely efficient basketball. Everybody knows their role. Everybody is in absolute lockstep with the same vision. And it's pretty cool to see. The Thunder team is very, very, very good. And the 3 wins they have now on the backside of this All-Star break were all absolutely well earned. And I think we're going to continue to see winning basketball from Oklahoma City.
Yeah, Oklahoma City, they're still 25-1 to win the title, which just seems monstrous to me when you think about just the way that SGA and Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren are playing. Gordon Hayward is slowly getting eased back into it. Giddey is such a strange piece on the team, and I kind of wish that he just, if you're going to have a bet on Oklahoma City to win the title, I just wish that he just didn't exist. I'm just not sure that he's really going to help them a great deal in the playoffs. I guess he's still soaking up minutes in the regular season, but I thought that, one of the telling moments of the season so far was, I believe it was in that Clippers game where Dagnall pulled Giddey at halftime for Isaiah Jones. Like, we're not
huge call,
which is, and I think it helped them win the game. But like right now, we're recording Sunday night, where it's the middle of the fourth quarter in the Oklahoma City game, and like they were down almost 20 in the second against Houston. Now they're up double digits. Like, this team is just it has been a regular season monster, and at some point, like, regular season has to translate a little bit to the postseason, even though if there are some potential shortcomings around experience and the lack of size and rebounding. Like there are a lot of things that this team does well. And I don't feel great about the Wolves at the moment, who lost to the Bucks at home and then really struggled to put away a pathetic Brooklyn Nets team. Now, admittedly, without Gobert, who in some ways is probably, I think he's been their best player this season and is probably a little bit more indispensable. But it's pretty close between him and Gobert. But that was just a disgraceful game in general against the Nets. So, they're the only team right now that sits above OKC in the standings. And if OKC is going to have home court against everyone else and may only have to play one of Denver and the Clippers potentially, I think this price, like they have a longer price than Phoenix to win the West and to win the title. Like I don't understand that at all. Well, I do understand. I think that's just wrong. I think Oklahoma City are more likely to win the West and the title than the Suns, even if you don't believe in OKC because of their youth. Yeah. I think it's pretty hard to make the case that right now the Suns in the 7th seed right now, like a play-in team that hasn't really shown a great deal. They're more likely to win than OKC, who have, are basically picked to get the 1 seed at the moment. Like that just doesn't cohere to me at all.
Yeah. Plus the Suns have a fatal flaw, which we'll cover in a moment. the Thunder don't, honestly. It's a really good team. And the fact that Degenau pulled the plug on the Giddey, in the second half of that Clippers game, I think told you how seriously they took that game. And that was the deciding coaching. That was it. The game was won because of that decision, I felt like. And Degenau definitely needs some sincere credit for what he's doing and how he's understanding and how he's learning about this roster. And like, if you have those games in the regular season, which will be instructive to you when it comes to making adjustments in the playoffs, then you can start believing in this team a little bit more. I got to tell you, the Gordon Hayward experience is leaving me cold. I'm not there. I'm not there. I'm much warmer on the Isaiah Joe as sort of the guy that you want in your closing 5. But really, just the balance on that team is pretty special. And the Timberwolves are a different story entirely. I felt like the Bucks beating the Timberwolves on Friday night was that a C game from the Bucks, and they made it kind of not really even competitive. There was a little bit of a flourish at the end for the Timberwolves where you thought maybe they'll come back, but the Bucks did not play great in that game, which I think was a little bit of an indictment of sort of the reality of the Timberwolves being competitive once we get to playoff time. And everything I've seen so far from the Thunder has been the opposite. So this team's for real, and they're going to scoop some awards.
Yeah, a couple other things coming out of the break. One, the Bucks. 2 impressive wins from the Bucks. They win in Minnesota as 4.5-point dogs, and then they destroy the Sixers in Philly. We're recording on Sunday, so today as we're speaking. And that's not like the Sixers aren't great, but still, that line was like 4.5, and they destroyed them by 21, and it's with Middleton missing both games. Like, it's just much like teams in crisis all season. They're 37-21, and they're within shouting distance of the 2 seed, which is the only thing that really matters for them. We'll talk about MVP in a sec, but Giannis is slightly building there, though it's still going to be uphill for him. The other thing too, and we're not going to deep dive this given that we talked about it on Friday morning's show, but I think this most improved player market's going to get really weird because Maxey, again, 8 of 19 today, another blowout loss. The team's like minus 270 to finish in the play-in. And as we speak, Kobe White is 3 of 13 and negative 16 in a game that his team is winning. So I think there is, and Kuminga just doesn't shoot anymore. He doesn't get shots. So I don't know what's going on with Steve Kerr's rotation. He falls in love and out of love with guys on a weekly cadence. So yeah, I think, when we talked about Jalen Williams at 50-1, who's having another good game as we speak, I think it is kind of live for that type of candidate to get in the mix. But let's one other kind of weekend takeaway. The Cavs Wiz game was, I think, a little instructive. We're at the time of the season where you need to have eyes wide open for teams that are pulling the plug, and the Wiz clearly are. They were
were they up 6 in the fourth quarter and Cavs almost covered? Like that was absurd. It was, looking for live opportunities to bet against teams that have no intention of winning, I think is going to be a nice way to pad the portfolio in March.
Yeah, I mean, it was 94-88, and then I blinked, and then the Cavs are up 105-98, just like that, largely because of a friend that we'll get to in the sixth man of the year market, Mr. LeVert. But let's talk about these make-miss playoff prices that have shifted a little bit in constant flux, obviously updating every day, but you have a thought on the Suns, who are minus 320 to make the playoffs, plus 270 to miss.
Yeah. I kind of admitted the miss price here. This Suns schedule down the home stretch is absolutely hellacious. Like, it really cannot be overstated how much harder their schedule is than the next hardest schedule. And they're up against teams who are healthy and who are in form and who are jockeying for their own playoff positions, on top of the fact that the Suns have a fatal flaw, which is that they don't play defense. And it's not even an effort thing. They just are not rostered well to have a competitive defense. Like, they can't have a roster that is either effective offensively with the pieces around Durant and Booker, and also protects the rim and also guards the wings. And the Mavericks took advantage of this so aggressively on the Thursday night game out of the break between the Mavericks and the Suns. If you saw the second half of that game, it was like, man, how are the Suns beating anyone in the playoffs? How are they getting into the playoffs? Like, that was all I could think. And they backed it up with another poor performance before, slightly righting the ship today against the Lakers. But if it takes a get-right game against the Lakers for you to find a win this time of year, and you're looking at the schedule that they are, staring at over the next 2 months, like, this is going to be really, really tough for them to find a very strong foothold in a very competitive Western Conference. I think pretty clearly you can, slot some of the teams in the Southwest ahead of them. And I think ultimately, Pell's getting the 5 seems likely. I don't think anyone's cracking the top 4. All 4 of those teams are the true blue top 4. The top half, the home court, I think is locked in now in the Western Conference. And I'm going to slot the Pelicans at 5. Based on the quality of play you're seeing right now from Doncic and Kyrie Irving. I'm fine having the Mavericks at 6, which means you're going to have to play your way into a 7 or 8 seed if you're the Phoenix Suns. And the Kings, even though I don't rate them, are playing good basketball, and their schedule is easier. The Golden State Warriors are playing good basketball, and their schedule is easier. The Lakers, it literally might come down to Lakers Suns in the 9-10. I don't think we should completely rule out that possibility, because these teams are pretty closely bunched in terms of wins. And I think maybe I am, kind of a little bit overrating the Warriors. They may kind of fall apart here, but like, I have at least seen they finally made the huge coaching adjustment of get Andrew Wiggins to play better. Get just in general, the ball in the hands of your guys who are good. And so, maybe the Warriors have left too much ground to make up to get into sort of 7-8 position. And the Suns will still have one opportunity, maybe even on home court, to play their way into the playoff mix. But at plus 270, I think this price is ridiculous. And even more than that, like, I kind of just want to be no on the Suns to do anything in the playoffs in the West, for the title. Like, this team is not rostered to play well in a best of 7 series. And I think the rest of the West is just too good to give them much credibility right now. So I think, against Suns was sort of my, kind of most confident thesis at the All-Star break. And what we saw, particularly in that Mavericks game, I think just helped triple me down in terms of my opinion on that.
Yeah, I think the Suns are interesting because people, I think, focus on the fact that, Beal he's barely played this season. He's played 30 out of 58, 59 games. And then the depth or the lack of depth, theoretically. But to me, the problem is that, like, their best guys aren't good enough at the moment. Like, there was, I think, a thought that Booker, after that epic playoff run, that he would vault into, a guy who could finish, 4th or 5th in MVP, that type of level of player. And basically that he would make the type of leap that Donovan Mitchell has made this season, and he hasn't really. And the idea that Kevin Durant, who, for a lot of last season before injuries hit, I mean, he was kind of the third guy for MVP behind Embiid and Jokic, and he's just not as good. This is his, age 35 season. His true shooting is down from, last year it was almost 69%, and now it's down to 64%. I think defensively, he hasn't been the same guy really ever since he got to Phoenix. That was an underrated thing of, the Brooklyn stint last season where he was, playing incredibly well defensively at a level that his defense has always been weird. I think back to that Golden State Oklahoma City series where he's defending the rim and repeat blocking Andre Iguodala, and it's just what is this guy the best rim protector in the league? What the hell's going on? What sport is he playing? And then it just seems to wax and wane a little bit. And this year he hasn't been, he's certainly not a liability or anything, but I don't think he's been the weapon that he was defensively in Brooklyn last season. And if those two guys aren't at, elite MVP fringe kind of discussion level, then the team just isn't that special, because I think that if Durant was playing at the level he was in Brooklyn and Booker was playing at close to the level he was in the playoffs, then, guys like Grayson Allen, Okogie, Royce O'Neal, Eric Gordon, they're fine. They're fine enough. Nurkic, but just they haven't gotten to that level, and I'm not sure that is really there. I do think that in terms of just betting against the Suns, I would suspect that, potentially the best bet will come just in betting their opponent in a round one playoff series, because I think the pedigree of the team is such, the kind of banked statuses of Durant, Booker, Beal. I can't imagine in the West the Suns are going to be plus 200 in any playoff series, right? They're going to get the respect because of the names and because that is in the relative recent history of what they've done.
Yeah.
But I don't think they should be favored against any of the top 4 seeds in the West, given they won't have home court.
So totally agreed. And honestly, when we were doing content around the All-Star break, it was literally licking my chops for you could get a home dog against the Suns in round 1. This is going to be great. And now I'm like, oh man, I might need to play playoffs no, because I might not ever get that chance, right? It's not that crazy. I can't even really overstate how absurd their schedule is. There's no freebies. The fact that Beal has been unable to, stay healthy, stay on the court, if he puts together a 25 game stretch where he is available regularly and playing well, then I'm going to have to eat some crow. But I'm fine saying that that's not likely right now.
Yep. No, I agree with you there. Okay, before we get to MVP, spring training is here. So for those looking to get ahead on the upcoming MLB season, grab your Roto World Baseball Draft Guide. It's loaded with comprehensive positional rankings, projections, and player profiles to ensure your draft is a success. Visit NBCsports.com/draft guide and use code BASEBALL24 to get 10% off at checkout. All right, NBA Most Valuable Player market. Now, this is going to be in a little bit of flux because Jokic is having a massive game as we speak on national television. As I'm saying these words, he's 24, 14, and 12, plus 13 against the Warriors. Shai is also having a big game. He's at 31, and he's only just come back in for his last stint in the fourth. Giannis, another massive game against the Sixers, and Doncic had a huge first half, but then he has to take a hit overall, given that they just lost to the Pacers. So as we speak, Jokic minus 120, SGA plus 200, Doncic plus 600, and Giannis is 12-1. And I think that's where your list of realistic candidates ends. Any new thoughts on MVP?
I'm just glad you put the question to me that way. Why in the world was anyone beating the drum for Jason Tatum MVP this last handful of days? Stop. What? Why? And the fact that is pretty clearly not going to happen, I think, is pretty straightforward right now. There are 4 candidates who can win. SGA would be the bet at price for me, even though it's not as good of a price as Giannis at 12-1, which I think is way too long. This is going to come down to the wire. The Tatum, if you don't know what I'm talking about, there was a couple of days where there was just nothing to say about the NBA because no games had been played and we were in the midst of the All-Star break. And, talking heads start to kick around. Hey, is Tatum in the MVP conversation? We need a topic. We need some fodder. Like, we need something to say here. And that will continue to happen through the month of March and April when it comes to NBA content broadly. People are going to need to come up with something to talk about. And I realistically think Jokic fading from this price is likely because people will talk themselves into the other candidates. I don't think that he warrants this massive favorite status. And we've said this a dozen times on this podcast in the last month. But, it should be a two-man, first tier at roughly similar prices, if not SGA's small favorite, in my opinion. And I think Doncic and Giannis with the potential to just steal based on, treeing for, running like gods for the month, of March. Don't overlook that. It can happen and they can steal it. There will be, a sexy narrative about some player who is on an absolute heater during the time where everybody's focused on March Madness. We need some NBA topic to talk about, and it'll get bandied about. And this is long from decided. Is kind of where I'm at. I guess the only new thought to add is that Jokic does seem to be playing with purpose out of the All-Star break. You've kind of always kind of noted that he cares more than he actually lets on by a lot. And it's pretty clear that he cares. He is literally, he's trying to come up with the highlight plays. He's trying to come up with, some of the stuff that can be MVP fodder. Let's see him do that for, keep that intensity, keep that focus for a couple more weeks. Cause I think realistically, this is probably as good of a period of time as you could expect for a Jokic MVP case. This last handful of games, he's been amazing. They've been playing bad teams. He's been putting up, absurd stats. That's going to fade. And I think the fact that, that all of the rest of the guys are keeping pace and or closing in is a problem for his candidacy.
Yep. No, I'm with you there. I think just a little random thing. So I was looking at Denver's schedule. When you look at strength of schedule in the NBA, you always have to look at what the last 2 or 3 games are, because the Nuggets, their strength of schedule is, I think, in terms of just them, say, winning a division or getting a 1 seed or Jokic's MVP case, the last 2 teams that they play are the Spurs and the Grizzlies. If you're betting Jokic MVP, and it's a small thing, but you'd rather those be, in the middle of March so that you can bank those wins and play teams like, the Timberwolves or the Celtics the last 2 games of the season when they might not have much at play. It's another thing so the Orlando Magic, their schedule, which I was just marveling at earlier today, they play their next 12 games. It's 10 tanking teams, and then the Knicks probably without OG and Randall, and then home Pacers. But and then outside of that, it's they play Charlotte twice, they play home Utah, they play Washington, Brooklyn, Toronto twice. It's insane. And their last 3 games of the season, they play the Bucks twice, and they play at the Sixers, by which time Embiid may be back. They may not have anything to play for, but that's perfect for Orlando. You'd much rather play the Bucks on April 10 and April 14 than in the middle of March, because by that point, they may not have anything to play for with seeding locked up, which makes the Orlando, who already have by far the easiest schedule in the league, makes it even easier. And why I think even with this loss to Atlanta, I think they should be favored over Miami to win that division. But with Jokic, it's funny because he seems to really rev it up for these national TV games. He took 9 shots in the first quarter against Golden State. He was amped up in that Celtics game. He's going all out. And even in the Bucks game as well, the first one in Denver, he was playing hard in that game. But then he'll have, random games against the Kings or whatever that aren't as big of an occasion. And he just kind of, all right, well, I'm just going to score 2 points in my 12-minute stint in the first quarter. And I'm just not sure in this race that waxing and waning like that is going to do it. And my kind of guiding thought with this race is I'm fairly confident that if SGA finishes ahead of Jokic in the standings, that SGA will win MVP. And currently he is favored to do that because the Thunder, who are about to win this game against Houston, they're up by 15 with 2.5 minutes left as we're recording. They're up on the Nuggets and they have an easier schedule. And I think they're less likely to take the pedal off the gas. And I think that, there's a couple other things to think about. One, if that is the case, then why did Jokic destroy SGA in the straw poll? And I think that's just because it was just in the immediate aftermath of the Embiid injury, and Jokic is just the cleaner guy to default to. Sure. When you have another 2 months to think about it, and it sinks in that, SGA has a better record with a much better story and narrative, and with perceived, worse teammates than Jokic, then I think it's going to be hard for people to ultimately justify Jokic over SGA when the advanced stats are basically a wash. And this is, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but my thought on this is that I kind of feel like that the winds of change are in motion and the narrative is starting to shift. And I'll give you 3 examples. So just before the All-Star break, Shaquille O'Neal, I think the broadcast for the Thunder Magic game, he said Jokic was his MVP right now. A couple days ago, he flipped. He said SGA. Stephen A. Smith, when he gave his big Tatum speech, he was like, the only other guy I want to hear in the MVP discussion with Tatum is SGA. I don't want to hear about Nikola Jokic in a 4 seed. Rob Perez, who does his weekly MVP leaderboard, flipped to SGA from Jokic for the first time this week. Now, these things, of those 3, only Stephen A is a voter, but I think that those guys are somewhat indicative of what just the mass chat is about MVP. I think that it is starting to shift towards SGA, and the more that the Thunder, the more days that they spend tied for the 1 seed or in the 1 seed as they are now, I think it's just going to build, and people are going to end up at what to me is the logical conclusion, which is that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is your MVP.
Yeah, we agree. So story time, and then I'm going to pose a question to you.
Sure.
So earlier this season, I was pretty aggressively betting Jokic 2-1 whenever it was available. Stacked a little position and figured I'm just going to ride this out. A lot of my thinking was Embiid could get hurt. And I have completely liquidated what I have in good prices on Jokic to bet SGA. There are places where you can get a decent sized stake on MVP, and I've been max clicking and getting resistance. Somebody else out there is on the other side, continuing to give a very favorable price to bet SGA in the 2-1 or better range. So that's kind of where my head is at right now in terms of just what I want to happen and what would be the best outcome for me by a lot. So very much a Thunder fan right now. A smart guy asked me a question, which was, I thought pretty interesting, which was, hey, you got a young team like the Thunder. Is there a chance that they kind of hit the wall at the end of the season? They kind of run out of gas, or they kind of don't have the focus to close? And I said, actually, in my experience, the young teams tend to not be as judicious about saving it for the playoffs. And they do tend to compile wins down the stretch. And they do tend to, kind of rise to the top in terms of standing. And if you were like, which of these teams is playing with the most purpose, has the best schedule, has the best path to get the 1 seed in the West, it's clearly OKC. And I think for all of these reasons, they're going to be very, very tough to beat in the awards market. And your underlying thesis of OKC being number 1 seed, is that all that the voters need to put him at the top of the MVP ranking? Of course it is. Of course it is. If OKC gets the 1 seed, that is the story of the season, period. And I think they get lots of consideration across all the awards, but SGA as the MVP is sort of the default acknowledgement of that. So right now, I think that's kind of the bet to be made. And I think 2-1 is a favorable price. And I'm kind of intrigued to see how this plays out because, again, somebody's on the other side of me on this one. Bet Jokic every click.
That's right. Someone was on the other side of you with Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year.
That's and that was in rocking chair winner, right?
Rocking chair against Parsons. Wasn't rocking chair against Watt in the end.
Yeah. So do you think that that theory holds any water of a young team like this not really recognizing that they need to kind of pull their punches and save a little juice for the playoffs, that they just sprint to the close?
I think it was pretty instructive as to how they're treating the regular season, that they went to the length of benching Josh Giddey in a big game out of halftime against the Clippers when there was nothing wrong with him physically. I think that signaled intent as to how much, they want the 1 seed. I think the safer thing there, the conservative passive option, is just to try and let him figure it out. It's a regular season game. But no, they wanted that game and they went and got it. But I think that any kind of concerns about them hitting the wall are just mitigated by the fact that they have a really easy schedule, and the easy schedule comes exactly when you'd want it to, which is this upcoming stretch that we're in right now, where like they're not gonna have massive losing streaks because they keep on. Yeah, they play at Phoenix, at the Lakers next week, and then they play at Portland, home Miami, home Memphis. They have another game against Memphis right after that. And again, with this, like, who do you play the last couple of days of the season? Well, SGA, his last 2 games of the season on the Friday and Sunday that the regular season ends, Milwaukee and Dallas, which I think is kind of perfect because I think those games are highly unlikely to matter for MVP, because when is MVP ever decided on the final weekend of the season? Like, people are making up their minds and writing their columns by then, and it's very hard to flip MVP on the final day of the season. So I think it's good for SGA because I think that he is, right, to me right now, he is on the path. If I'm an SGA backer, and I am, I just kind of I don't want like outliers. I don't want to be exposed to massive high leverage individual games, because I think that the status quo enduring should be enough to get him home. So yeah, I think he should be the favorite. The way I price this market right now, I have SGA 45% to win, Jokic 35%, and then Luka and Giannis 10% each. So it's basically, plus 122 on SGA by that, and he's plus 200. His MVP price right now is longer than OKC's 1 seed price, and to me that's just completely insane, because I think he is much more likely to win MVP outside of the 1 seed than he is to lose with the 1 seed.
Could not agree more.
That if you're bullish on OKC, you think they're going to get the 1 seed, I'd just be betting SGA MVP. Just quickly, just so we say the names, Luka's price has shortened a lot lately, and I get it. They had a 7-game win streak. His counting stats are absurd. I just think it's going to be really hard for him to win a head-to-head MVP matchup with Shai, when Shai has, I don't think everyone thinks that Kyrie is the best teammate across the 2 teams, and the Thunder are miles ahead in terms of record. If Luka absolutely destroys SGA in their matchup in the middle of March head-to-head, then maybe. But the other thing with Luka is that his on-off isn't good. It's never good, for whatever reason. I think that is going to hurt him a little bit too. I think he can win if he just goes crazy and they get the 5 seed and he beats SGA head-to-head and keeps on putting up these ridiculous stats. But I think it's uphill for him. I think Giannis needs Shai and Jokic to be like the 3 and the 4 seed, and then he surges into the 2 seed, which is possible, and he's been incredible, but they've got a lot of narrative to kind of unwind and rebuild about their season to the point that they're giving him MVP. All right, let's move on to our 6th man of the year, which is a very wonky market, which is good, given that the most boring market in the world right now is Defensive Player of the Year. It's like, oh yeah, if Gobert plays another 10, 11 games, whatever he needs, then that award is done. But you want chaos betting these markets, and you want vulnerable favorites. I think, even though I don't think Malik Monk is mispriced necessarily, still think he is vulnerable. I think the rest of the book is being distributed in the wrong way. So 6th man of the year, Malik Monk is minus 115. Tim Hardaway is 3-1. Norm Powell plus 450. We're recording this before Norm takes the floor against Malik Monk, head-to-head matchup. Norm is starting that game in place of Paul George, which isn't ideal, but probably a net positive for him overall, given that he will get a lot of face time and usage, you suspect. So LeVert 30-1, Bogdanovic 40-1, putting a line through Bogdan now that Trey is hurt and Bogdan started. And then Clarkson, Mathurin, Portis, so Westbrook's in there as well. I don't think any of those guys are winning. And then Reid is the big mover. He's into 20-1. Wow. What do you make of this market?
Well, big old correction on Reid, which I agree with, because he's been incredible off the bench for the Bulls. Been a huge part of their success. and it's been undercovered. Still at this point, stuck on Powell Island. Excited that his price moves in. Yeah, it's kind of moving towards the top tier here, but I still think that the top two on this board are hot fades. I don't think that the Kings or the Mavericks are going to get into the top 5 in the Western Conference. I think one of them will be in the play-in and one of them will be the 6th seed. And I think ultimately, if you're that far down, if you're on the fringes of the playoffs, it's going to be tough if you don't have a huge case statistically over Powell, who right now they don't. Like, it's a pretty narrow margin in terms of just counting stats. And I think Powell's role is going to continue to be, kind of pressed into mattering, because they're going to try to continue to get Paul George rest, get Kawhi rest down the stretch. Norman Powell, of course, got the last game off. Clippers are in a little bit of a wobble right now, which is I'm not enjoying a ton, frankly. But that said, Powell was, I thought, very good against OKC, even in the loss, and gets the night off in order to play tonight, and is probably going to be the featured guy. Like, he'll be the guy that is expected to carry the offense, particularly in the fourth quarter. And if he can beat the Kings, and if he can get a healthy, stat count going tonight, then, he can continue to kind of help pump up some of his numbers, because his season-long stuff is trending up. And in general, he's playing well. Like, he's just flat out playing well. Malik Monk is, he's a heater off the bench from a scoring standpoint, but that's kind of it. And if that's, I don't know that that's warranting 6-man consideration to what tune up -115.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's an interesting case because I think on an individual basis, if you just remove the team, like if the Kings right now were a 4 seed, then Monk would probably be running away with this, because to be fair, he's only averaging 15 and 5, but his usage and minutes have really ramped up of late. So, like, his points prop in the market each night is usually like 16 and a half. So if you project that out, he's going to end up averaging close to 16 points a game and 5.5 assists, efficient, or like league average, slightly above league average true shooting. He's a terrible defensive player. His advanced stats are bad across the board, and the team right now is tied for the 8th seed, and they have a hard schedule. So I still think Monk is the most likely player to win, perhaps by a decent margin, but I don't think there's a ton of meat on the bone at -115. Where I think the market is wrong at the moment is that I think Tim Hardaway is really heavily fading in this market, and he can't make a shot at the moment, which I don't care about as much, but it's tanking his numbers and his efficiency is falling off a cliff. The more important thing is that he just doesn't get the same minutes or usage when Luka and Kyrie are both fit and healthy. His stats this season are largely a product of his 10 starts when generally one of those guys is missing. And if you look at his pure bench numbers, then it's not impressive at all. And he doesn't play defense. He doesn't pass. His advanced stats are terrible. So it's like, what does this guy actually do? Like, what is his pathway to beating Malik Monk, let alone anyone else in the field? And I don't really see any unless, I just don't really see how he does it unless he just goes completely ridiculously hot from 3 for the next 6 weeks. And he shoots well enough that, they have to keep him in closing lineups. But, you take a look at his recent games and, it's just a mess. Like, he is 11 points, 12 points, 8, 5, 10, 19, 4, 0 in 22 minutes against the Sixers on February 5th. His shooting this month, he's shooting 34.8% from the field, 32% from 3. He's averaging 1.8 assists for the month. I'm not sure, and he's playing 27 minutes, but I don't think that that there's just enough there for him to really turn this around. And it only really happens if Luka or Kyrie get hurt. And then if that happens, then either he's starting, which hurts him, or the team is probably losing more, which hurts him as well. So I just don't really see the path for Hardaway. I don't think he's more likely really to win materially more likely to win than other guys in this market who I'll talk about now, where my strategy in terms of beating Malik Monk, how Jay Croucher is going to beat Malik Monk, is I think when you look at the flaws in Monk's case, it's primarily that one, his team is favored to be the 8th seed. And then 2, his advanced stats aren't good at all, which doesn't matter a ton in this market, but may matter a little bit as if it's a floor on a guy who's on an 8th seed. And so you want guys who stand in stark contrast to those things. So my strategy in this market is I am going to war with guys who have a chance to be a top 2 seed. And guys who have, because you want that contrast with Monk, where voters are sitting down like, oh, am I really going to reward the Sacramento Kings who are on an 8th seed, and Malik Monk is, the counting stats are okay, but the advanced stuff isn't great. Or am I going to reward, someone on the Minnesota Timberwolves or the Cleveland Cavaliers or the Los Angeles Clippers, who are going to be, 55 plus win teams potentially and potential top 2 seeds. So the 3 guys who I'm going to war with, for better or worse, and they're not the most inspiring soldiers, but they are my with them. Norman Powell, we've talked about a lot, Reid, and Caris LeVert. And they all, now, Norman Powell's advanced stuff is like, he has like basic advanced good stuff in terms of like shooting efficiency. His EPM and his on-off is fine as well. But the defense isn't great with Norm. But he has the shooting efficiency. He was fantastic in that game against Oklahoma City his last time out. And if he is able to play 27, 28 minutes per game and he averages 15, 16 points per game the rest of the way, gets up to 14 points per game on the season on like 64% true shooting, and the Clippers are a 2 seed, then I think that can beat Monk. Reid, if the Wolves are the 1 seed and Naz is a hyper efficient, he's going to be 12-5. It doesn't make you feel great, but he's been much better defensively this year and previous. His advanced numbers are better than Monk. If he's on a 1 seed and does that, I think he has a path to win. And then the weirdest one is Caris LeVert, who I've bet earlier in the season. I feel it's been the most uninspiring bet. It's like the meme of the thing prodding Caris LeVert. Can you do something, Caris? Like what? And then he finally did something tonight, Drew. He put up 18, 12, and 8 against the Wizards in 28 minutes, and he closed the game. Cavs are a 2 seed. They're the hottest team in the league the second half of the season. LeVert playing the way he did when Garland and Mobley were out helped them keep their season afloat. The issue is he just kind of feels irrelevant and inessential. But if he's going to get 28 minutes and close the game and the Cavs are a 2 seed, then if that can continue, if he keeps playing those minutes and he's closing games, then I think there's definitely a path where he can win, given that he's made huge strides defensively. Again, advanced stats, EPM better than Monk, better than some of these other guys. So I think there is a path for him too. He's 30-1. To me, that is a bet, a lukewarm, but I think that is still a bet on. But what do you think overall the strategy of riding with Powell, LeVert, and Reid, who aren't exactly LeBron, Wade, and Bosch, but they'll have to do it?
A famous man once said, "You go to the war with the army you have, not the army you want." And I think the army you have, I'm fine going to war with them. Honestly, like I don't mind. There's not Malik Monk's, and this is not to disparage him. Like I'm glad he's made a career out of what is is a marginal NBA talent, but he's not part of the telling the story of the season, and the Kings are not part of the telling of the story of the season. And if Malik Monk ultimately gets it, it's going to be because the Kings catch fire down the stretch. And at that point, betting him at -115 is absurd. Like you just bet the Kings, right? And I don't think it's likely. There is a chance even that his usage and his time on court goes down because, Brown realizes we need to win games. Can't have Monk out there for as much as we have him out there. And you see an uptick. Fox is playing 40 minutes. You see an uptick, with some of the players who are a little bit more, two-way. So, yeah, I mean, he's inflated because of the pace that the Kings run and because he is scoring. And that's about it. Your Hardaway takedown, I thought, was, chef's kiss, no notes. And that leaves Powell, Reid, and LeVert as realistic candidates to take this. Because, again, going back to what we said last week, I think there are voters in the voting block who literally will look at who's the 1 seed, who's the 6th man. Oh, he's not a candidate. Who's the 2 seed? Who's the 6th man? Oh, LeVert. He had some nice moments in the second half. Who's the 1 seed in the West? It's the Timberwolves. Oh, Reid. That guy, he filled it up. he had some nice moments. He was a pretty important part of that team. Oh, Norman Powell. He's been playing great. He won games. He beat the Clip. He beat the Warriors in comeback mode. I remember that right before the All-Star break, right? Like there's a realistic chance that the 6 men on the top seeds are ultimately going to take this home. That's the way it goes in all of the uninspiring years, really.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, and I think that is the most powerful kind of unquantifiable thing in the market, which could come to bear. In terms of polling on this, there was a clutch points poll, which has actually strangely been predictive in years past.
Really?
Lined up with the actual results, yeah, which I didn't really realize until looking a bit more into it. But like Malik Monk got 33% of the vote there, and right now he's minus 115, and he might be. I mean, this may be his high point. I'm not too sure. Like, it certainly feels like he's the guy at the moment. And the fact he only got 33% of the vote tells you that, people are potentially a little bit lukewarm on Monk. A lot of people, when I've thrown this kind of concept of riding with these 3 soldiers of people, the comeback is that, well, Naz Reid's averaging 12 points per game. Norm Powell's averaging 13.5 points per game. I was like, yeah, in a usual year, that would sink you. But in this year, like the alleged kind of Sith Lord in the market is averaging 15 and 5 on an 8 seed. Like, it's very beatable. I think that in this world, I do think that a hyper-efficient, good advanced stats Naz Reid on a 1 seed could beat Monk if he's an 8 or a 9. There is also the chance that like Malik Monk is just like a 9 seed, at which point like it just becomes potentially persona non grata. If they start losing games. So you just have to bake that into the market too.
We are in lockstep there. If the Kings are a 9 or a 10, put a Sharpie black marker through them.
Yep. No, we're there. All right, let's take down Malik Monk. Let's get him. All right, don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those of you watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also, a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to Amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick. We'll see you tomorrow.